Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blind Buys, a podcast where we watch and discuss movies we've bought sight unseen. I'm Jesse, and with me, as always, is my collector in crime, Josh.
Hey, thanks for joining us for our 12th episode where we'll be covering the Wachowskis' car fu extravaganza, Speed Racer. This has been one of the biggest, noisiest physical media releases in recent months, so I'm really excited to dig into this one at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, me too. I have not bought this one yet, but within the circles that we move, there was lots of people throwing around links for pre-orders, and I think there's a steelbook of this one too, isn't there? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, there is. It got a steelbook and then a standard edition. I believe the steelbook sold out.
Yes,
initially very quickly.
That sounds right, and I'm really kind of take it or leave it on steelbooks. If that's like the one that's available, I'll get it. But this was one that people seem to want to really get in on the steelbook, which I kind of understand given, the look of it, which I think we're going to talk about at length. But yes, definitely excited to dive into this movie. But that will be at the bottom of the hour. But first we can talk a bit about what we've been watching in the interim. So Josh, what's been good for you in the world of movies recently?
Well, it's been a slow couple of weeks for me, movie watching wise. The main thing I got into these last few days has been Richard Linklater's Before trilogy. I had the Blu-ray box set of that from Criterion, and I've had that for years, and I finally decided it was time. So broke those out and watched them in chunks over the course of the last 2 weeks. Mainly just when I had a free 30 minutes, here or there. So that watching the whole series that way kind of made it feel like one long movie, which I think definitely didn't hurt the way that this played for me. Especially because, the big thing about this trilogy is kind of exploring the passage of time and what that does with human connection and how feelings can change over time and how we remember, romantic moments and things like that. I was really taken with this trilogy.
Was this your first watch through?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Ethan Hawke is... it's been said by many people he's one of the greatest actors alive currently. I tend to agree. I think he is such a naturalistic actor. Every acting choice that he makes and every time he's speaking, it just feels so effortless for him. And these movies are really a showcase for that style of acting that he's really
especially
good at.
In this one where certainly by the second movie, he and Julie Delpy just have such a, they've known each other for so long. They've developed these movies with Linklater. So it's kind of something that's kind of hard to replicate, I think, unless you have really deep rapport with somebody.
Yeah, and I guess we should say for listeners who may not know about these movies, it's a trilogy of films directed by Richard Linklater, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight, made over the course of 20 or so years, and tracking the connection between two people who met once on a train, spent a night getting to know each other, and fell in love. And then kind of seeing where time takes them after that. So yeah, my first time watching this, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I really love those movies. I've seen Before Sunrise a couple times, but the others only once. And have you seen Boyhood?
I have not, no, but it's been on my radar for quite a while.
I only watched it once, I think on disc not long after it came out, and I thought it was good, but I just didn't. I should give it another shot, but I think this is kind of maybe it's just the dynamic between just the two of them that we spend so much time with, but that was really the his sort of time experiment that really worked the most for me. But I need to give Boyhood another shot because I know people that's the one that a lot of people point to, and it is similarly, it's a similar situation except he just did it all in one film, and with notably a child actor, which is really an incredible roll of the dice if you're going to start with someone who is I don't know how old that kid was when they started, 10 or younger probably, and moving through to when he's going off to college. So yeah, I gotta give it another shot. But Linklater's definitely one of my guys. Yeah. And I also, did you watch these movies? Because I think I only just learned this year, because it's one of those things you sort of glean from film Instagram or whatever the the word for it is, like if when your algorithm is tailored the way mine is. But
Yeah.
apparently, either today or yesterday was like a date that they mention. I think in Before
Yes.
Sunrise.
Yeah,
I think
June
it's like June
16th.
16th. Yeah. Did you?
Yeah,
So was
that's
this
the
just a coincidence that you kind of
Oh
timed
yeah.
this around that?
Yeah, total coincidence. I
Okay.
The reason I ended up watching these in the first place is because I put them on my Criterion challenge list for the year. I was able to fit
Got
all
it.
three in different categories. So yeah, it was. I just decided it was time, and yeah, I was pleasantly surprised yesterday, as of when we were recording this, that June 16th was the day that they spent their first day together. So
It's
yeah,
great.
really fortuitous timing. I did watch Murder Rock, which was another Fulci film. We were talking Fulci last episode. Come to find out, today is his birthday as we're recording, June 17th. So
Yeah, he would have been 99, I think, from what I
yeah,
saw.
Murder Rock, I highly recommend for anybody who's a fan of aerobics, filmed aerobics, especially, Fulci doing his thing with these dance sequences is just something I didn't know I needed in my life. But
Yeah, I wasn't able to finish, but I did start watching Pulse Beat, which I know you have
yes,
seen in a Bat and Spider watch party, and I am so excited to finish that. But I think this, and I also have Murder Rock coming from the Vinegar Syndrome sale, so this to me feels like between I'm gonna have an incredible. Well, I don't have I have Pulse Beat from off of VHS from
mm-hmm.
Scarecrow currently. It seems like the thing that could get a boutique release eventually, and it would make an amazing sort of aerobics trilogy between Pulse Beat, Murder Rock, and then Heavenly Bodies, which I don't know if you've seen that, but like just
Yes,
incredible stuff. And I feel like Pulse Beat, even though I haven't finished it yet, I feel like there should be, now that I'm learning more about these Italian genre ripoff
yeah,
little alcoves, like with the Disco Italiano box set that's coming out. Pulse Beat almost feels like the Italian ripoff of some of these ones because there's like bad ADR, off-brand actors,
yeah.
extraneous nipples and stuff. So yeah, I feel like there have to be more. There has to be more out there like this, and I need to find it. I'm gonna talk to some people at Scarecrow. And then there's what's the horror movie? There's a horror movie that takes place at a gym. What's it called? Do you
Yes,
remember?
Death Spa.
Oh, Death Spa. Death Spa is so good.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I remember we talked about it a few episodes ago where I watched Death Spa and Killer Workout back to
Oh
back,
God.
and
Oh man,
this is
it's
a
so
whole
good.
subgenre that really people need to study how this became a thing. I need a whole dissertation about this.
Severin will make a 140-page book or whatever like that that's coming out with the Disco Italiano set about the
Oh yeah,
aerobics explosion of the 1980s.
I'll buy
Yeah.
it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then last thing for me to mention here, what I've been watching, I had a fun drag queen double feature. I watched Tina Romero's Queen of the Dead, which came out last year. And then for the first time, I watched Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. So saw those two back to back. Obviously, genre-wise, they couldn't be more different. But I enjoyed both. Queens of the Dead is a horror movie about drag queens, getting caught up in a zombie apocalypse, specifically starring Nina West of Drag Race fame. But she does some incredible dramatic acting in this movie. Obviously, she has some comedic moments as well, but her dramatic work in this is fantastic. And then Katie O'Brien plays one of the leads in this as well,
Yeah,
and
she's so good.
she's just great.
Yeah. I want to see Jack Haven's in it too, which I just watched. I saw the TV Glow. Man, what a movie. Yeah, I got to check this out. Just watch listed it.
Yeah, it's on Shudder, I believe. And then, yeah, what else to say about Tu Wong Fu other than like just really enchanting? There's something so like fun and pleasurable about watching drag queens just doing their thing despite pushback they might be receiving. In this movie they're like stranded in a small town, and the plot's not the most complex plot you've ever seen, but it's basically drag queens fixing an entire town's problem in a weekend. And really great time that I had with that movie. So I can see why it's a favorite of so many people.
Good stuff. Yeah, Tu Wong Fu is a blind spot for me as well. Got to catch up
Oh,
with that.
nice. Yeah, it had a Blu-ray release from Shout Factory. So knowing them, I'm sure they'll be upgrading that to 4K at some point in the future. That's what I've been watching. What about you?
Well, you may have mentioned Truck Turner the last time, but I also caught up with Truck Turner. Our friend Brandon had been talking that up, and it was maybe the last. No, I think I also have to still watch Black Caesar out of the first of the Shout Blaxploitation box sets. But Truck Turner was one of the ones I hadn't watched, and popped that in and just had a fantastic time. It's just an amazing action movie with just some incredible supporting performances from Yaphet Kotto and Nichelle Nichols, whom everyone in the Western Hemisphere will probably know from Star Trek, but she's just like,
Yeah.
she is like a vengeful madam in this film, and with a spicy mouth, and yeah, she's just like a revelation. If Uhura from Star Trek is the only thing you know her from, so yeah, Truck Turner was awesome. Had a great time with that. And then another one was I think it was I don't know if it was a letterbox roulette pick that I got from somebody, but I finally caught up with The Swimmer with Burt Lancaster, which is one I've been meaning to watch for quite a while.
Yeah, me too.
That was really good. You haven't watched it yet?
No, I haven't.
Where did I watch it? It was Grindhouse. Grindhouse put out a Blu-ray. I feel like this is one that's going to get a 4K, and I'm going to kind of wait to pick it up because I do want to pick it up. I really liked it.
Yeah.
And I almost don't want to say too much if you haven't seen it about like where the story goes, but it's sort of this quixotic day's journey that Burt Lancaster decides to take from some pool party that he's at in suburban Connecticut, trying to swim from there to his house by connecting all the pools, and things. You go on a journey with him in more ways than one, and he just really, really thought-provoking movie, interestingly shot, and Burt Lancaster looks incredible. He was like in his 50s when they made it, and he's just like looking really good in a pair of swim trunks.
Yeah.
And another one, oh yeah, Kokomo City. So Kokomo City was the roulette pick that I got from somebody. This is a game that we sort of play in the 70mm VHS Village Discord, where somebody assigns you a movie to watch based on some parameters that you give. And Kokomo City is a documentary from 2023 that I've been wanting to catch up with since it came out, because I think Mia from Letterboxd had been talking it up. And just a really touching and funny and candid portrait of pretty much all black trans sex workers, just talking about their lives and their realities, and just kind of showing what their lives are like in a very kind of unvarnished way, with some of the heartbreaking things you think might go along with it, but it doesn't really kind of center tragedy and trauma the way that some stories like that tend to. So it felt like a really loving and full portrait of their lives. So I really, really thought that was good. And I think it's on Canopy and it's on Hoopla and probably some other places. And it's short. So I'd recommend that to anyone to check out.
Nice.
And oh yeah, I saw Masters of the Universe.
Did you?
One of the two theater trips that I made since we last talked. Not for me.
Oh no.
For a number of reasons. Yeah, I don't know. I think the things that that the movie thought was funny, I didn't really laugh at all that much. I thought it looked really bad, which I think will be an interesting point of discussion for tonight's film to talk about, because it relies so heavily on computers. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of other movies, and they don't all look bad, but this just to me kind of looked like a muddy mess, the way a lot of Marvel franchise and other franchise movies tend to. But I regret to inform you, as other people have, that yes, Jared Leto is pretty funny as the voice of Skeletor. Alison Brie is really good as Eva Lynn. She's really funny. So there were some fun parts to it. But it was one of those ones that if I didn't have a list, I probably would not have checked it out. So it's the last one I'll mention before we get to our shared watch from the last 2 weeks. I saw the TV Glow. I'm trying to catch up with all of Jane Schoenbrun's films before Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma comes out later this summer. And yeah, I just, this was one that was really big in our circle of friends when it came out a couple years ago. And I totally understand why. It's very kind of a very mesmerizing movie, kind of a 90s period piece partially, about a couple of young people who are going through some hard things and have a shared love of this TV show, and some strange things start happening, and it goes to some really thought-provoking places. So I was really happy to catch up with that. I think I had previously mentioned watching Schoenbrun's first movie, We're All Going to the
Yes.
World's Fair. I caught up with that recently, so it's really cool to see the way that they've been just leveling up each time, and it's got me really pumped for Camp Miasma. So yeah,
Yeah, it is so interesting to see the progression, like you mentioned, because it is. I saw the TV Glow is legitimately like an entire order of magnitude above We're All Going to the World's Fair. Not to say that We're All Going to the World's Fair is bad, but it's like you see the increase in like scope and like the different themes that they're kind of wrestling with, and like the different stylistic things that they're starting
yeah,
to pull in. And even like the soundtrack for I Saw the TV Glow is just stocked
so
with
good.
bangers. Like
Yeah, so good.
ever since I saw that movie, there have been 4 or 5 songs from the soundtrack that have been like steadily in my playlist, like nonstop. So I love that movie a lot, and I'm hoping to revisit it again soon before the new one comes out.
Yeah, yeah. I rented the A24 Blu-ray from Scarecrow, but I'll pick it eventually for myself. And then the last film, which we both caught, I think almost at the same time, was Disclosure Day
Yes.
from one Steven Spielberg.
Ever heard of him?
Yeah. What did you think of Disclosure Day, Josh?
I was mixed on it, to be honest. It got me to the Spielberg feeling of awe several times, which is, obviously what you want when you're going to see one of these Spielberg summer blockbusters. And I think like the score is great, especially because John Williams is in his 90s and he's still cranking out
Yeah.
these scores that
Wild.
are fantastic and mesh well with the things that Spielberg is putting on screen. There are a couple of action sequences that reminded me a lot of, his previous work in Indiana Jones and War of the Worlds and all that stuff. I just felt like there was something missing in it for me that is, I think, on a character level. Like, I don't think any of these characters really were fleshed out to the level that I was hoping for. And something interesting that the folks over on the Big Picture podcast brought up is the fact that it's such a literal movie,
Yes.
and there's very little subtext or ambiguity going on, and it also leaves very little room for like creating doubt about the situation or mystery or anything like that. And that was something that I like couldn't articulate until I heard someone else, say it, and then I was like, "Oh, maybe this is what's missing for me." And I'm also just frankly not a fan of the ending, and maybe I'm just too cynical. I don't know. What did you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in a similar place. Certainly on the cynicism, but just generally all like I liked it. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I saw it in the theater. I mean, Spielberg can still
Oh yeah.
make he's gonna if it felt like an old school like 90s thriller, which I love. I feel like we don't get enough of those types of movies, so I was glad to see him still be able to crank one out that hits. But yeah, I think, and something else that Big Pick mentioned was I'm just not that invested. I love movies about aliens, but
Mm-hmm.
whether you are invested in questions about aliens the way this movie is, I just, yeah, just it didn't really the message such as it is. Not even the message, but just like the idea that change could be brought by the truth being let out the way that it is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't quite inspire me the way that I think Spielberg wanted it to, especially just living in a world that is now on the brink. So I totally get where he's coming from. Like
Yeah.
he's as consumed by concern as we are, and this is how he's for the state of the world, and this is his way of kind of showing that. But it just felt kind of cobbled together from as well as it all fit together and was thrilling. I just couldn't help but thinking I've seen this before from him and done better.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was the stuff from things from E.T., things from Close Encounters, things from Minority Report, those to me are all more thrilling and thought-provoking movies. So it's, I mean, I don't, maybe it's not fair to hold that against him, like that he's made other incredible movies, but it was hard to not think of those movies. And if I'm just thinking in the future, if I'm going to reach for a movie to watch that's in this vein, it's going to be one of those ones, and probably not this one. But I did love him. I thought Emily Blunt's performance especially was really fantastic. There are definitely some thrilling sequences, but I didn't feel as caught up in it as I have in some of those other films.
Yeah, and not to spoil too much about like different parts of the movie, but I will say the part that I felt was the coolest to me, and like the part where I felt like, okay, we're really getting into something cool here, and I kind of want to see where this goes. Is the part about the invisible house where Emily Blunt is finally
Mm-hmm.
able to take control of, like, whatever alien power is granted to her, and they get to escape in a really neat way. And I thought that was cool, and I kind of wanted more of that kind of ingenuity in the filmmaking and the way the action sequences are set up and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was some fun practical stuff, the way they sort of finished the way that all played out.
Yeah. All right, that covers pretty much everything that we've been watching lately. So now it is time for us to transition to coming soon to own.
Coming soon to own on video and DVD.
And as always, this is the part of the show where we mention a couple of new release announcements that have been made, and pick out a couple of the ones that we want to highlight specifically that we might be picking up for our collections in the future. Jesse, do you have any your eyes on this week?
Yes, and so Severin has, conveniently for us, Severin has been doing their once a day announcements for their upcoming summer sale. They always have some launch titles that go along with that. And one that instantly caught my attention is a film called The Manitou, a film from 1978, directed by William Girdler, starring Tony Curtis as this sort of psychic flim-flam man who gets caught up in this 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 actual, like an actual real supernatural mystery involving like a possession, and it just goes to some really wild places with a really almost indescribable finale. Some really crazy body horror stuff happens, but I don't know, something about like these older Hollywood stars. Like by the time I need to go back and watch more Tony Curtis stuff from sort of like when he was past his heyday, because I mean, I think this is just one of several movies that he did in the latter part of his career that were like, I don't know, maybe he probably didn't have to work. I don't know what his life was like, but he just said yes to some really interesting things. And I don't know if it's kind of funny to think of him and Jamie Lee kind of going tit for tat with some really some really crazy movies during that period. But anyway, yeah, they're releasing the Manitou in a 4K, and that's a definite pickup. And that was one that I had learned about. I think it was definitely from the Flophouse podcast. Dan McCoy recommended it. I think it might have been from that same Ridiculous Sublime series that I mentioned, that I think I've mentioned on this show before. Mm-hmm. But just a series that the Nighthawk in Brooklyn runs of just these unbelievably weird movies. And yeah, it totally hit. So the Manitou is one that I am watching for from that sale, along with another one from that sale that I think you're going to mention. So I'll leave that for when it's your turn. But then we also had Criterion made some their announcements, of course, including The Secret Agent from just this past year, much lauded film out of Brazil. They're doing a 4K Blu-ray combo coming in September. And this is one of those ones, I think it comes out a lot in our circles where we talk about these kind of like recent releases, as in like recently produced movies that mm-hmm. get kind of beamed straight into the Criterion collection. And how sometimes there's kind of like a lack of features packages because there's just like not much turnaround time. But in this movie, there's some good stuff in here. There's they've got some making of stuff, some interviews, but they also include the director Kleber Mendoza Filio's 2023 documentary Pictures of Ghosts, which is kind of about theaters in his hometown of Recife in Brazil, and kind of how like the closing of those sort of I don't know, I haven't seen it, but I've heard really good things about it. Represents sort of like the end of an era and him reflecting back on his life growing up in this town with these movie theaters. And I think it was a bit of a, because he kind of grew up, I think, around the time when The Secret Agent was the events of that movie were kind of unfolding. So, I mean, you're getting like an entire feature length documentary from the director. So that's just really cool when they do that. And this was already a movie that I wanted to revisit. I think it was in my top 2 or 3 movies from last year. It's the kind of movie that feels mysterious in the way that it's constructed. So I'm excited to revisit it, and I'm glad that Criterion's giving it a nice release this quickly. So that's definitely one. And then the last one I'll mention is another Criterion release, which I'm actually about to watch with another sort of movie watching group, sort of like a book of the month club, except we would all watch and talk about a movie together. Satyajit Ray's Days and Nights in the Forest, which I I rented the VHS from Scarecrow because they had it. Because it's really, otherwise it's hard to find. It's hard to find this film. The restoration, I think, has been making the rounds at rep theaters. So I think we knew that this was coming from Criterion, but I like watching VHS, but this was rough. This was unwatchable. It was so dark. And
really?
What you call it? The subtitles are burned in and they're practically unreadable. And so it's the kind of movie, I mean, Ray is just such a foundational director. It's kind of like every movie of his should be restored and presented in this way. So I'm glad to catch up with it soon and to then probably pick this up because I've only seen a handful of his movies, but they're all just so beautiful and moving. So yeah, Days and Nights in the Forest from Satyajit Ray.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I hadn't seen any of the Criterion announcements except for The Secret Agent, so all the rest of them would be first time watches for me. And I've just been trying to decide which ones I'm choose, if any, or choose to wait and rent. So we'll see. I've got a couple from the Severin sale that stood out to me so far. First up is the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is getting a 4K release from Severin during their summer sale. And this movie is one I've never seen, but I'm extremely intrigued by this cast. Brian Cox, Emile Hirsch, who, of course, we'll talk about today, as well as Ophelia Lovibond, who was in the extremely underrated and probably unwatched by many, many people show Minx that was on for 2 seasons. She was really great in it. And I'm really intrigued to know what this is all about. The limited edition, it looks like, has, the titular Jane Doe kind of in a body bag, and it looks like you can kind of slide the box open from the middle to reveal what's going on inside her body there if you slide it open.
Yes. So, yeah, it's a really clever design, and one that I haven't seen quite done in that way. Yeah, this is the other Severin. I mean, I need to look into some more of these other releases they've announced because in typical fashion, I'm not really familiar with most of them at all. But this one I watched during Halloween season a few years ago, late at night by myself, like in a dark room, and I'm generally not like scared during horror movies all that much. They're just kind of fun for me to watch, but this one really got me because it's like a single location in a morgue with these guys and the body, and things just start happening. And the sound design, yeah, it was really good, and I've been waiting for a good release. So this one really hit for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the director Andre Overdahl directed The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which came out 2022, 2023. And I got to see that in theaters, and I had a genuinely good time with that movie. I think a lot of people who went to see it may have been a little disappointed based on the amount of like vampire content in that movie, but I thought it was a really great, vampire thriller, and so I'm interested to see more of his work for sure. Let's see here. The other Severin release that I've seen so far that I'm interested in is a 4K release of Ferdinando Baldi's Terror Express from 1980. This is described as of all the 70s Italo sleaze Last House on the Left variants, only one indescribably tasteless classic that goes places a civilized mainstream film would never dare to explore. And that is intriguing to me. Whether or not it actually lives up to that description will be seen soon, I suppose. But with a description like that, I'm kind of immediately bought into this. So basically, it looks to be that some bad dudes doing bad things on an overnight train, and with Italian horror, it's sure to be a very specific vibe that I'm into. So, have you seen this?
I have not, but looking through just a gallery of posters of the rest of Baldi's work, it's just like an incredible array of exploitation films. And these posters sometimes rarely deliver on the thrills within the movie, but these look like fun. So I'm interested to check that out.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last one I'll mention, Radiance also announced a slate of releases for September of this year. And the one that I'm going to call out is actually their latest transmission release. It is a film called Joe. Have you seen this movie?
I have not, but I listened to it. Jamel Bowie and John Gans covered it on the Patreon feed for a special, like, sort of special bonus content for their Unclear and Present Danger pod, which I'm sure I've mentioned here before. They cover military and political thrillers of the 90s, but in the bonus feed they go back further into stuff, from the Cold War era, kind of anything vaguely political, which, writ large, and they covered this one. And yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, this is kind of like Peter Boyle just kind of feels underrated. I don't know. He was such a good actor. He did so many different things. And this is like, a sort of gritty crime thriller with him as the lead. So I'm definitely interested to actually check it out. I've heard they discussed it at length. So I'm glad to see it getting the kind of the full treatment from Transmission.
Yeah, this is one of their limited edition Blu-rays, so not getting the the chunkier box set treatment that their 4Ks do. But I mean, I've already kind of pledged to be in the bag for these releases after their first couple of ones were ones that I really enjoyed. And this is directed by John G. Avildsen, who directed Rocky. So that kind of might inform maybe what the vibe of this is in some way. But yeah, I'm really interested in this. And apparently this was also Susan Sarandon's first on-screen role. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
Good stuff. Well, then I guess it's time for us to move on to our feature presentation.
Let's do it.
And now, our feature presentation.
In a world of carkitects and mega corporations, Speed Racer tells the story of, Speed Racer, a young man who has racing in his blood. After the passing of his brother Rex in a tragic collision, Speed becomes increasingly well known in the racing world for his fearless skills and outlandish moves, even closing in on his late brother's record time. E.P. Arnold Royalton, CEO of Royalton Industries, sets his sights on Speed joining his racing team, but Speed refuses to leave his family's independent team behind. Enraged, Royalton reveals that the World Racing League has been rigged by the big corporations for years, and threatens to destroy the racer family's legacy. To fight back, Speed joins forces with Inspector Detector and the mysterious Racer X, hoping to expose Royalton's corruption once and for all. But first, Speed will have to survive his toughest races yet. With his family and girlfriend Trixie on his side, will Speed be victorious? Find out in the Wachowskis' Speed Racer. All right. I guess it's worth mentioning Speed Racer is based on an anime series from the 60s, I believe, that I have no prior experience with. Do you?
I had definitely caught this on, some kind of a Saturday morning situation, maybe a couple times when I was a kid. And they sort of give you some stingers of the old school theme, which is a real kind of earworm. So it was fun to hear them I was kind of hoping they would break out with a fuller version of it at some point. But overall, I did like the music, not to jump right into that. But yes, so I was familiar with the property for sure, and had seen some bits of it. I'm not a manga person really. I've read like a little bit of the Lone Wolf and Cub, and that's really it. So I'm not into manga at all. But yeah, I'd always been intrigued by Speed Racer for sure. And I guess I also kind of thought of Johnny Quest kind of being a sort of a similar, like Johnny Quest kind of felt like the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, felt like them kind of taking on a Speed Racer sort of vibe, and I definitely watched some of that as a kid. But no, I had not seen this before either, this film. I missed it in theaters at the time, and I even missed also when it was re-released recently into theaters. I was really hoping to catch it, because as incredible as this looked on the 4K that I was able to rent, I just found myself also wishing, man, I wish I had seen this in a theater where I could just feel like I'm in like a tunnel looking at nothing but all of these colors.
Yeah, for sure. I think it got like an IMAX release too, and I think that would have been like the absolutely ideal way to experience this in the theater. But for me, I had never seen this before either, and I picked up the 4K kind of last minute. I added it to an order from Orbit DVD to kind of get the free shipping that you get if you get 3 or more items. But, a lot has been made of this kind of re-entering the cinematic consciousness after being, remastered and re-released. And, for lots of people, this is a really important film based on where people saw this in their lives. And I've heard a lot of stories about how much people love this movie. And so I was really eager to check it out. And truly did not know what to expect. Hadn't seen any footage from the movie, nothing like that. So this entire thing was brand new to me, and not to spoil, my thoughts on this. I mean, we can get right into it, but this kind of broke my brain in a good way. It took me a while to get on this movie's speed because it moves so fast, and my tired brain was having some trouble keeping up at the beginning. And there's so much to look at, and the plot isn't necessarily complex, but there's some steps we have to take to get to the final events, and
there's a lot of sort of breathless exposition coming from like announcers and things, and news kind of filling you in on some of the broader intrigue that's going on with these corporations and stuff. And I kind of almost like dropped into a place of just kind of treating it almost like a film noir. Like, the movie's just going to go where it's going to go. I don't need to know I don't need to remember all these details. Just kind of go along with the ride and enjoy the reveals as they come. But there's like a corporate espionage plot of sorts, I guess. Maybe not corporate espionage, but yeah, the evils of the megacorp trying to make the Racer family a pawn in their game, and whether or not they're going to be able to score one for the independents and stuff.
Yeah. And I will say, I did get there probably around the end of the first act. I think I was finally able to settle in and be ready to kind of ride on the wavelength of this movie. But I had such a great time watching, especially the action sequences in this movie, specifically like the racing sequences. It's called car fu, which is it's a term that is used in all the behind the scenes featurettes on this disc, and it really phrasing it like that, it effectively communicates the style of action in this movie in a way that like I don't think just calling this a racing movie does, or like a live action cartoon does. You know what I mean? Because when you're seeing like these cars, you know, in like combat with each other basically, and pulling out tricks and all this stuff while kind of mimicking like, you know, anime visual styles and movement elements and things like that. It's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, you know, George Miller would kind of revolutionize car combat with the, you know, when he returned to the Mad Max movies, but this is different from that. Like this
Yes.
really does feel like, you know, the Wachowskis are taking the sort of wuxia wire fu influences from that they would, you know, deployed in the Matrix, but doing it with cars, and you can only do that with computers. Like there's no way to do this in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like they nailed it. It was thrilling to watch and pretty coherent in terms of the action, like the way it
Yes.
was filmed. Like it didn't feel like I think I've seen two of the new Transformers movies in the theaters, the first one or two, and after a while I was like, I'm kind of out, because that kind of feels like maybe another comp you could make of like just seeing cars or things that are like cars doing some really wild action. But to me, I kind of get lost in what's supposed to be happening with the scenes or in the flow of the action with those movies, but that never really happened with the stuff in Speed Racer.
Right. The action moves extremely fast, but it's not like we're getting a lot of, you know, shaky cam or where things are like unintelligible on the screen. There's such like a sheen and a sleekness to the way this movie looks because it all, you know, comes from a computer pretty much entirely, and it has one, you know, very specific like pop art, you know, flashy color style that it adheres to the entire time, that a lot of the action is extremely legible, even though there are, you know, cars going by at like 200 miles an hour and the camera is, you know, twisting in and out and doing impossible things for a live action camera. They liken racing in this movie to creating art, and that kind of it kind of folds back in on itself when you're watching this movie. You're seeing it as a work of art more than like, you know, just kind of your standard, you know, off the shelf action sequences that can be directed by, you know, unnamed journeyman director. It what the Wachowskis are doing in this is like pure action cinema art, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just awesome.
Yeah, it's because this was kind of their. I mean, I guess the Matrix sequels, in a sense, could be considered like their blank check movies, like the chance to finish it out after the Matrix. But this is what they did after they finished the trilogy proper, and it was kind of a weird time. I was a little let down by Revolutions, I think. Still enjoyed the trilogy as a whole, but just I don't know how they could have finished that story in a way that kind of lived up to what happened in the first one. They just kind of keeping like upping the stakes. But anyway, just to say that like it's amazing that I'm glad that they were able to do what they wanted with this one. And it's really a shame. I think I see here it made like a $93 million against a $120 million budget, which is just like pretty rough for a movie that cost that much to not break even.
Mm-hmm.
And this was even kind of past the time when you would be like, oh, we'll make it back on DVD or Blu-ray or something. This was kind of like coming to the end of when that could be an expectation. But I don't know. It's a real shame that more people didn't see it at the time, myself included. Because I mean, I kind of alluded to it when I mentioned Masters of the Universe. But the way they filmed this, it makes most modern computer generated stuff just look like garbage. Like it just muddy. You know, the colors and everything was so sharp in this movie. It's like we can have nice things with computers.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's a question of like. I mean, they're still spending a lot of money on these movies, but I don't know if it's a question of craft or the sort of heightened reality that they were sort of going for that allowed them to kind of make some choices that people tend not to when they're making stuff in the sort of the Marvel milieu that relies heavily on computers.
Yeah, this movie just has such a specific look, and it is clearly intentional that not everything is supposed to look like real.
Exactly. Yes.
It's these people are not supposed to be immersed into the background of the scenery, because that's not how anime is animated. That's not how even like Hanna-Barbera cartoons, for example, are animated. And if they're trying to play on that style that Speed Racer originated in, it becomes clear like very early on that's like a lot of this is entirely green screen. Like the subjects in the frame are lit differently than the backgrounds, and so they kind of stand apart from the background. Like the actors are not enmeshed in the world, whereas like if a movie today like Masters of the Universe or a Marvel movie or something like that, I think they go to real pains to try to make it as convincing as possible that these people are interacting with like CGI beasts, or like if they're filming in the dome or whatever that's called, where like they have the
Right.
screens in the background with the photorealistic movement and things like that. That I think it gets to a point where if we've seen that enough times, and they also don't give like their animators really enough time to make it as convincing as it probably should be, then it becomes obvious to us that it's all extremely fake. Whereas in this one, they're like not trying to hide necessarily that these are people in front of a green screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're. Yeah, that makes sense because the unreality sort of extends beyond the racing sequences to these. There's a lot of these wipes that they have
Mm-hmm.
that they do when like an announcer or somebody will be saying something and the camera sort of pans across their face, but then there's like a wipe to another scene or something as their face goes across, and it just kind of you're kind of always being met with some kind of like really interesting visual thing that you can't really do. You wouldn't do in anything that's trying to seem in any way realistic.
Right. And that type of transition is straight out of like a Scooby-Doo cartoon,
Totally. Yeah.
where the wipe transition is being covered by the pan across
Yeah.
the
Or
screen
if you're
of the
like
face.
reading a comic or a manga, your eye is sort of going across the page as you read. That's sort of like
Yeah.
how it felt to me. Yeah, I will say I kind of felt like there were times during the daytime races where I started to see not the seams, but some of it started to look a little bit more like a really high end video game cutscene,
Yes.
you know,
Yes, I agree.
animation. So I
Hmm.
kind of felt like you sort of hear like people say often like that's why sometimes, you know, some of these computer animated movies can there's a lot of stuff set at night or in dark spaces
Hmm.
to kind of hide some of that. Like it was almost too sharp at times, especially if there wasn't like a human figure in there to sort of to stand out against it. But I still thought those looked really good. But there's definitely felt like there was a contrast toward the ones between the ones that were taking place like kind of in the arenas that were like at night. Like those I think all just looked incredible.
Yeah.
Like no reservations. But I still did love especially that once they switched to the there's like the race across the desert where they have it's like a rally race where they have to
Hmm.
go from one city to another, so it takes you through these different environments. There was still lots of really fun and just inventiveness with the design of the cars that sort of like matched the personalities. It was almost like they took the pod racing scene from Phantom Menace and tried to extend that of like what would how could we make these people match their cars with all the weird stuff that they would have them do, or like the wacky races, I guess,
Yes.
to go
Yeah.
back even further.
It
Like,
feels very Wacky Races to
yeah,
me.
or I guess Speed Racer. I should go back and watch Speed Racer, which is also getting a Blu-ray release, I believe. It's the whole run of the series. Someone's
Oh,
putting that
nice.
out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does definitely makes me want to go back and catch some of the original series to sort of compare. What did you think of the people, like the performances?
I think that they were great across the board. I don't think, for me, I didn't think there was a weak link in the entire cast. I mean, John Goodman, of course, just one of my guys, all time guys, doing, it's this father figure character is a type of character he's definitely, done before. He's kind of known for these kinds of characters, but he makes it his own. And Emil Hirsch in this he's charismatic for sure. I think the character itself kind of is like the least interesting character in the entire movie, but still not a bad performance by any means.
Yeah, he's kind of surrounded by all these characters that are made to behave in a very big or arch way, so it can kind of seem like he's definitely more muted,
And very
by
earnest.
design,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with all of them. Christina Ricci was amazing. Susan Sarandon having a lot of fun as Speed Racer's mom, and the guy who played Royalton himself. Yeah, he was doing a lot. He was also Prothero in V for Vendetta from around this time, so I felt like he had a really good run of being just really kind of like total, piece of shit villains in movies around this time.
Yeah,
And
Roger
he just
Allen.
he just chews up all the scenery in a way that was a lot of fun. I think, unfortunately, I don't think it's his fault, but the only Speed's younger brother, Spritle.
Yeah. I think it's Sprittle. Yeah.
Yeah, Spritle. I found it hard whenever he was on screen. And I think this was, again, I don't think it was the young actor's fault. I think it was just what he was told to do, how he was told to behave. It's a lot of really big faces and mugging and stuff, and he also does a lot of acting with a chimp. Like, it's a real chimp, right? There was a real chimpanzee in this movie.
I think it is mostly a real chimp. And
Yeah, which is pretty wild. I mean, they don't have the chimp doing lots of stuff. He's mostly just kind of there hanging out. But I don't know. Ever since I saw Phenomenon, whenever I see real chimps on stage, I totally get why now they mostly do CG chimps, because it's just that they just seem very unpredictable, and they're very strong, and there's a lot of the chimp in this movie.
Yeah, and that made me wonder, like, if the chimp is maybe just like a character they carried over from the anime, or what, because that character and his, like, the little brother's character and the relationship with the monkey and what all they get up to in this movie doesn't really seem to serve, any kind of purpose at all, other than just to kind of fill space. So yeah, that made me wonder if it was something that they wanted to incorporate from the anime. And that kind of feels like a symptom of this being a quote unquote blank check movie. Like, I feel like the studio would have pushed back on including, a chimp in this after maybe seeing some test footage or whatever and being like, what is this doing in this movie? That feels like something they might have recommended being cut out. But, it's the Wachowskis coming off The Matrix. They can do whatever they want. And that kind of feels like how that ended up with this. I do think that part of the movie is the weakest part, but it's still fun to see. Like, there's a moment where they're watching TV together, and then they break into like an animated sequence of the two of them kind of
Yes.
Fighting, posing with each other, and that's fun, but extraneous.
Yeah, that kind of felt like something out of Scott Pilgrim, which, I mean, there's no doubt that Edgar Wright, obviously Edgar Wright saw this, but this definitely feels like a bit of an influence on the visual style of that movie, for sure, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So there's this whole subplot in this movie about Speed's older brother Rex and him dying seemingly in a crash. And then as the story goes on and Speed meets Racer X for the first time, he feels a familiarity with Racer X, and even when they're racing each other on the track, they seem to be able to kind of anticipate each other's moves as if they had like practiced together or had experience racing together in the past. And so, you kind of come to think that maybe Racer X is secretly Rex, and the movie does some interesting reveals, and then like reveals on top of reveals with that character. But what do you think about that subplot and how that kind of plays into Speed's development as a racer of his own?
Yeah, I had a good time with it, even though I don't know that I bought for a second what the ruse was. But I mean, definitely one of the more memorable sequences for me, I think, will be when he's sort of racing. I think it's the first full race that we see where Speed is like, he has the potential to break the track record that his brother had set. So you see him racing sort of against the ghost of like a sort of phantom image of his brother in the Mach 5.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, and to see him sort of like he pulls his punch at the very end so that his brother can, so that the record will stand in his brother's name. I thought that was really sweet. So I enjoyed it, even if it was kind of like you see it coming and it led to a bit of a soap opera sort of
Right.
reveal at the end. I mean, I did kind of feel bad for you know, we don't get to see much of Scott Porter, who plays his brother at the beginning of the film, who I was a huge Friday Night Lights fan, and I really enjoyed his work there. So I kind of was like, oh man, Scott Porter in a movie, which I'm sure I've probably seen some other movies with him, but I was kind of excited to see more of him in this one. But for that to be cut short was a bit unfortunate. But no, I thought it was fun, and it just sort of lent itself to the, I don't know, something about this feels very operatic in the way that it's everything is very heightened. So to have that sort of very melodramatic storyline just kind of feels like it fits in this movie.
It's also worth mentioning too that opening sequence where Speed is kind of racing the phantom image of his brother is also like the key like exposition driver of the entire first act. The entire race is kind of built around these flashback sequences that explain character origins and connections and kind of sets the plot in motion. But it's all happening, from different characters' perspectives as the race is going on. And I thought that was a really interesting way to deliver this essential information about what's going to be happening in the movie while keeping things moving and action packed. It's a fun way to kind of mess with time and space in the narrative. So I thought that was really neat. Do we want to, I don't know how much you want to get into like the corporate corruption plot of this and the steps that Speed and Racer X kind of have to take to hopefully try to take Royalton down and things don't ultimately go as planned, but that there is a lot here that feels timely to this moment, especially about corporations and extremely rich people holding too much power and not believing that the rules apply to them. There's a lot of that here, and it is made very explicit, like it's the text of the movie, that this is the big bad. With the Royalton character, him being kind of like one of the main car manufacturers for racers and sponsoring the race and kind of having his own like Willy Wonka-esque factory. There's a whole sequence where he's giving the racer family a tour and kind of trying to bribe them, force them to join the team, but not really trying to make it seem that way. And then eventually when Speed refuses to join the team, that's when we find out that there's been all this corruption in years past. And even the races that Speed remembered as a kid being really enthralled by were rigged and all of this stuff. And that kind of leads to Inspector Detector seeking Speed out, saying that there's another racer who has intel on Royalton but won't give it up unless they help him win a race to drive up the value of his company and so on and so forth. But like you said, it really is best to kind of let the plot of this just kind of happen.
Yeah. It is interesting to think about the Wachowskis after this kind of, they were brought into the studio system to make The Matrix after they did Bound, which is just an incredible sort of like thesis statement movie, which was done, I mean, from what I understand, a fairly independent production.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly outside of the big studios, but like it's for them to then kind of this does have it has very much that anti-corporate sheen to it, and they didn't make, they did Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending after this, and kind of went quiet for a while, at least as a duo. So it's interesting to think of this as their sort of as a musing on what it means to kind of like go inside the system and see how it works, and to kind of kind of like push back on that. And again, even this kind of like feels to me at least a very, as far as computer animated films go, a very handmade movie in a way that a lot of movies just don't feel like that to me now. So even thinking of it as like how the Speed's family makes the cars, and they're all very intentional, and like it takes more time, but it's going to be better.
Yes.
I feel like there's something there because you just don't get. It feels like the type of a movie that we didn't really get again, and maybe there's a reason for that because of the kind of material it was adapting, and they wanted it to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's hard to think of other movies that look like this, and whether the sort of the reaction to its not delivering on expectations might have stopped us from getting more of them. Hard to say.
Yeah, I think this whole thing can definitely be read as a metaphor for filmmaking and what it means to stick to your artistic integrity and like you said, doing things the handmade way.
Yeah, and I mean this is just me looking at Wikipedia, but it's fascinating to look at the production history just in terms of like who they thought, like who who could have potentially directed this film. I mean, they're saying they thought about giving it to Gus Van Sant, which I cannot fathom what that might be like a Gus Van Sant directing this movie.
That doesn't even register with me at all. Like I don't like.
Yeah.
How?
I mean, who knows how long or how serious that was? But it also mentions Johnny Depp as potentially the playing Speed, which it would have been different.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fascinating because this is sort of like whenever the timeline they're saying this is sort of like, I can imagine him sort of like in his Jack Sparrow era doing this, doing something like this for sure. But yeah, it's interesting how this, and maybe there's more of this on the disc you can say, because I didn't really watch any of the features, but it would be interesting to hear the Wachowskis talk about what their path to making this was, since it's obviously not a story that's original to them, but yeah, interesting production history. Well, Josh, was there anything else that stuck out to you about this film that you wanted to make sure we mention?
Yeah, lots of little things, really. Just, I mean, this movie is begging for a rewatch, like almost as soon as possible, because every single frame is packed with just stuff, like, and things that are interesting to look at and that draw your eye. And world building things, like the fact that in this world, these cars, T180s, they're specific, like vehicle bodies that all the racers in this league use, and they get ejected in these like foam bubbles whenever they crash and that kind of thing. I want to know more about that. I didn't need answers to those things in the movie, but I kind of want to do more like supplemental, reading up of like of how it was decided, how these things would work, because it really interests me. There's an action sequence in this movie which introduces us to Racer X for the first time, where this mobster named Cruncher and his goons are in a ginormous like RV 18-wheeler type thing, and they're interrogating another driver, and they have piranhas in a tank in the truck.
Yes.
And Racer X comes up on them quickly on the road, and they have a shootout, which is shot just brilliantly, and it takes place at night, so it might cover some of the rougher CGI edges if that's the case, but just the kookiness of the piranha tank in the truck really stood out to me as an extremely interesting choice. Really funny stuff there.
Did you have a favorite car or racer that wasn't aside from Speed and the Mach 5?
Oh, well, there is a bonus feature on this disc, which I think was released like contemporaneously with the film, that basically is a deep dive of all the different types of vehicles in the movie. Like, it's an in-world video about the racers and their cars. So I watched most of that, and it was super interesting. But a lot of it is just like a shit ton of fake techno mumbo jumbo. That doesn't make any sense, but it really gives the sense that the Wachowskis and their art departments and all of that stuff really thought this through to an insane level. Like every detail of this was so completely planned out. But there was one car that like catapults bugs into other people's cars, and I think
Yes.
that one might be my favorite out of them all.
Yeah.
What about you?
I had a good time with when they were during that cross country race where it was sort of like clearly like kind of the Bush League. It almost felt like when the again to thinking of Fury Road, when suddenly you see like, oh, here's the motorcycle gang that shows up. It kind of felt like something like that, which is a lot of fun. Like the I don't remember what they're called, but there's almost like the Pink Ladies. There's like a crew of like Pink Lady racing team that I thought they were a hoot. And that again, just I can't emphasize enough. Just the colors in this movie are amazing, and it just kind of like I think it's a lot of people have bemoaned sort of like how even just in a lot of superhero films, like it's almost like there's this aversion to colorful stuff, and this just feels like a really great breath of fresh air of like just to see lots of colors on the screen, especially in the 4K. Just looking fantastic.
Yeah, it would be so interesting to see two screen grabs of one from Speed Racer and one from Wicked for Good put side by side to see like how colors are used differently in modern movies nowadays. Just an astounding difference there for sure. Favorite quote in the entire movie. There's a point in this movie where Speed has been told by his father not to go to the race anymore because it's the same race where his brother died. And so Speed sneaks off anyway with Trixie to attend this race. I think it's the rally race, but the family discovers that he's gone, and so they go to find him, and they end up helping him. But anyway, they stay the night at this hotel, and a ninja comes to attack them, and John Goodman just beats the hell out of this ninja. And it is so much fun to watch. And then I think Trixie comes into the room after the ninja is incapacitated and is like, oh my gosh, was that a ninja? And John Goodman's like, more like a nanja. And that made me laugh really hard for no reason. Just so funny.
And then doesn't Trixie say like something about like the standards for ninjas have fallen or something like that?
Yeah.
That whole sequence really made me laugh. That was probably my favorite quote for sure as well.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
Add that to a super cut of John Goodman just beating people up. Yeah, grab some scenes from The Righteous Gemstones and all that good stuff. Oh yeah, last thing I wanted to mention casting wise, Richard Roundtree and Hiroyuki Sanada are both in this movie, in small roles, but are just character actors that from many other things, and when you see them, it instantly raises the profile of the movie that they're in. So just wanted to shout those two out because I was quite surprised to see them both.
Yes, Richard Roundtree was going to be the one note that I was going to bring up that we hadn't hit yet. He's just so fun as this announcer who comes back periodically. He just kind of delivering zingers throughout. I really enjoyed seeing him, and at first I was like, "Is that Richard Roundtree?" And yep, for sure it was. Yep, so very, very welcome addition there.
Yeah. Any other notes that you had?
I think we hit all of them. That was it.
As far as bonus features on this 4K disc, I got the standard edition released by Warner Brothers, and there aren't a ton of features on here. Most of them seem to be from previous DVD releases of the movie, so produced around 2008 when this movie initially came out. They show several clips from the movie that are clearly in SD quality, and it just kind of further drives home what a fantastic remaster this is in 4K. Obviously, the colors and effects and stuff still have that intended look, seeing it in DVD quality, but it is just still a night and day difference. The things that they were able to do with this remaster and really pushing like brightness levels and saturation levels and all that stuff. It's just even more apparent after seeing like the circa 2008 clips of this movie. The Wachowskis were not included in any of the behind the scenes features that seemed to come from the previous DVD release. So a lot of it was people talking like about the Wachowskis or almost like for the Wachowskis. And kind of what I gleaned from that was that they made this film because their nieces and nephews couldn't watch their other movies. Which is something you hear a lot from major filmmakers like Martin Scorsese directing Hugo because like his grandkids couldn't watch any of the movies that he had made in the past, that kind of thing. That's kind of what that made me think of. But the biggest thing that I've gleaned from the feature besides that is the fact that they tasked video game designers to create full versions of the tracks in this movie. And basically the way they filmed the racing sequences is that they had, you know, car models set up on a giant gimbal with, you know, like 270-degree green screens. And basically they were just driving the tracks that the video game designers made. So they had a responsive steering wheel, and so they would be responding to the track in real time, and it would move the gimbal, and that kind of is what gave the car movements that kind of, you know, more realistic feel than it typically would be if you were just filming static against a green screen. So I thought that was great because the whole time I was watching the action sequences in this movie, I was like, I cannot comprehend how they planned to shoot this, how they shot it, how they knew what they were getting, or even if they were getting what they wanted, and how they edited it together. And it seemed like they were able to kind of put a lot of that together in real time, at least kind of on a, you know, a low to mid quality level to make sure they were getting what they wanted. So I thought that was super interesting. But the main special feature that is kind of the draw of this release is a new interview with the Wachowskis that was filmed this year in 2026 after them revisiting Speed Racer for the first time in what seemed like a really long time. And they called it kind of reclaiming this period of their lives, in their creative lives and personal lives, and like remembering the joy they had in it, which I thought was really heartwarming. They had a lot to say about the reason why they chose this movie was because of the joy factor that they remembered getting from cartoons like this as a kid and wanting to communicate that on screen, while also making what they called a postmodern movie in the style of like postmodern literature, where they're kind of like breaking up the structure and the tools used to make movies and fashioning them into something that kind of hadn't been seen before. And so there's a lot of talk about that in the interview as well. But yeah, and then they kind of drove home that, again, it's the story of them as filmmakers. And I think we kind of picked up on that a little bit already. But it's definitely worth watching. They get emotional a little bit during the interview. It's about 10 minutes long, but they have a lot of good stuff to say. So it's worth watching. But that's pretty much it for bonus features.
That's good. Yeah. I definitely would love to pick this up at some point.
Yeah, it's a keeper for me, for sure. Like I said, this is definitely going to need a rewatch sooner rather than later, so I can kind of pick up on more of the stuff that I missed the first time around. But I'm just glad it exists in this format in such high quality, and now I can watch it whenever I want on my TV at home. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good one too if you were trying to like explain to people what the big deal is about 4K. If you showed them this disc, it would really kind of speak for itself. So.
Yeah, and it's a great movie for me to watch specifically because it kind of feels like watching people play Mario Kart, and that's my preferred method of experiencing Mario Kart is watching other people play because I'm horrible at it. So yeah, really speaks to me on that level too.
That's funny. Well, since we've wrapped up our discussion of Speed Racer, that brings us now to letters from friends. If you have thoughts about any of the movies we've talked about, you can always email us at blindbuyspod@gmail.com. And this week we do have a letter from our friend Brandon. And Brandon writes, Hello, gents. Have been loving the show so far. Thanks, Brandon. And a few weeks ago, I received my Kino Lorber 4K of The Great Outdoors in the mail. As I was opening it, I had a flashback to a dark time in physical media, and this memory sparked a question I had for you two. The memory first. I believe you're both old enough to have experienced this, but I could be wrong. During the early to mid-2000s heyday of DVDs, almost every single standard release would have a white and clear sticker that ran across the top of the DVD case and folded down onto the front and back cover of the case. I do remember this.
Oh, yes.
Yep. This would often be under the shrink wrap and was adhered directly to the case itself. I hated these damn things. Sometimes they would come off clean and easy and in one piece, but I would say that was a rarity. Often they would leave a sticky glue residue at the top of the cases, and in worst case scenarios, trying to remove them would actually rip the clear plastic that was attached to the case that held in the slipcover. I realize this is a small thing and replacement DVD cases were available, but it was something that always irked me, and I'm glad we've moved past that era in physical media, and most standard releases are just in shrink wrap. Now the question, are there any physical media packaging choices that are particularly maddening to you? They could still be in practice or from back in the day. Another that popped into my head, just to give an example, is anytime discs are stacked on top of each other within the case. Thanks, and can't wait to hear more episodes. One of the pods I look forward to the most. Oh, very sweet, Brandon. Thank you.
Yes,
and thanks for your
Brandon.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, those white strips on top of the DVDs back then were the bane of my existence as a person who was beginning to collect DVDs, kind of from an early age. I hated those things a lot. And I'm sure many other people did as well.
Yeah. I'm glad that's over, but that doesn't mean that there are still some odd choices being made.
Oh yeah.
One that comes to mind for me, and that I've just contended with recently, having kind of reorganized my collection to kind of put things in their place. Like stuff I've watched that I want to put back in the order they should be in the bin, so I can find things. The Train Spotting 4K from Criterion.
Yes.
Is they made this. I have it. I kind of made a stack here of stuff. Nothing about it is standard. It's like I'm holding it here. It's this card,
like an envelope
flap.
Cardstock.
Yeah, an envelope. That's a good way to describe it. That tucks, but the size. There's nothing standard. It doesn't kind of conform to the other size standards of the things in the collection
in both height and width.
Yes. Yeah. So even in the bins that I have, it stands up too high. So like if I close the case or put a top on that, it's gonna crunch it. And this is like, it's basically just cardstock. So I've already got a couple little, dings on it. And I don't know why. I don't know why they decided to do that. What is it about Train Spotting that said we're gonna put it in this weird case? So I don't, and it is also one of the ones, and this is one of the more generally irksome things, it slides out in a sort of in the sleeve configuration, which whenever there's like the discs are sliding against something physically, that kind of makes me nervous, which leads me to the other big one, literally big one, the Showa era Godzilla set.
I have not seen how these are stored, but I know the set itself is rather large.
Well, let me show you, because I have it right here. So, I mean, it's incredible and monumental and beautiful. Here, you can see it.
Yes.
So for, again, the famously audio medium of podcasts, this is a oversized book, if you haven't seen this before. And it has just these amazing illustrations inside, like bound illustrations. The first half is sort of like each page is sort of like I'm sure there's a standard comic book term, because they have terms for all the different, sizes in comics publishing. But huge illustrations of the for each movie with a write-up. And it is just beautiful art, beautiful colors. But then when you get to the back where the discs are stored, you've got these half-moon sleeves.
Oh, I hate those.
And you can see in a couple of them here, this is a tall set of packaging. The glue or whatever, you can see here, the glue's kind of come undone. The discs slide down if you sit. I mean, you can even see this here. I've been meaning to get in touch with Criterion about it, because I think some of my discs are a little scratched just from them living inside that case. And for that one especially, you can even find people on eBay have created like taken like those what you would get in like a movie like a or a TV series set of like a Blu-ray case, but they've redone the cover art to sort of match that size. So you can
okay.
have I keep meaning to get something like that so I can put the discs in a protected place, because this is just not. I love the way it looks, but it's got to work functionally. So
Yeah,
that's frustrating.
absolutely. Those like cardboard half slots are just some of the worst and like counterintuitive methods of packaging a disc of any kind. Like there's I feel like that one's been used forever, but one that comes to mind that uses this that has bugged me a lot is the recent Universal Monsters 4K
Oh yeah.
releases. They use the same thing, and when I first got the package of it and opened it up for the first time, I was having such a hard time getting the discs out of those slots because they are like wedged in there. And so you're kind of like trying to lift the disc a little bit so you're not
Yep.
scratching the back of it, but then you can't get enough like traction on it to pull it out of the slot. Yeah, that's just the worst. One that comes to my mind, a packaging choice that's particularly baffling, and I'm not sure if you have this one as well, but the Wong Kar-wai set from Criterion as well.
I do have that. I kind of I enjoy it. I forget how the discs are put in with that, but there's something about it. I know a lot of people complained about that when it was released, but it's sort of this almost like a puzzle to open it to
Yeah,
figure out how.
like an origami style puzzle.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are elements to it where you would think there are like things that you could pull out of sleeves, but you can't. And
Yes, there's sort of these pages that are it's a single piece of paper that's been folded over with a tight crease, and you would think you're supposed to be able to pull it open, but you see these sort of glimpses of things inside. I kind of like it. I kind of like it as sort of like, plays along with the nature of how he makes his movies and some of the imagery.
yeah,
But it is one of those weird choices that Criterion sometimes makes.
yeah. And it's another one of those ones where the size of it doesn't really conform to any of
Yeah.
their like typical box set sizes or anything like that. It's not like I don't hate that packaging, but I think it's kind of baffling. And anyone who might hold it for the first time and tried to be like figuring out like what opens and what doesn't, it's just kind of confusing.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of people like ripping things and then realizing, oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. So that's not good. You don't want to,
Right.
rip something that you
Yeah.
just spent a lot of money on, even if it wasn't a sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another not to keep bashing Criterion, but another one of their packaging styles that I don't really care for is in some of their box sets where they've got the outer cardboard sleeve, and then there are like each movie has a very very slim like
Mm-hmm.
cardboard case that doesn't really secure in any way. It's just a very slim cover with a flap that closes. So like the Jacques Tati set, the John Cassavetes set, that kind of thing. And the reason I don't like this packaging is that the slim cardboard sleeves warp so easily or get kind of bent out of shape so that when it's like standing on a shelf, they're not flush with the edge of the cardboard packaging. And so it's like it's not conducive to vertical stacking. It's not conducive to like horizontal stacking either because they could get squished, and just not ideal for me personally.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
think they look good with the spines facing out on a shelf when they're in a set like that.
Yeah. One that I will shout out for just really excellent and pleasing design is the Cinematographs sort of media book presentation that they do.
Oh yeah,
I heard an
absolutely.
interview. Yeah, I heard an interview with Justin Liberty, who runs that line for Vinegar Syndrome, and it's like in every way like really like his baby. He's like just the ore collector for physical media, so he sort of like said, I thought about the package designs that I like and things that really bother me, and that's what they tried to bring into consideration when they were designing the packaging for that. And yeah, they just look and feel really great. And he even was talking about like trying to get just the right amount of, you know, whatever, maybe not the right word, but like tensile strength, the amount of pressure you have to put on the spindle to get the disc out. Because that's a thing. Sometimes they're really tight in there, especially on some of these studio releases. It's like, I'm afraid I'm going to bend. You can see the discs bending, you know, when you're trying to get them out. And that's not good. So yeah, and they're just really nicely, there's kind of like these nice inset cases inside the media books, which sort of mimic a cloth bound, or actually no, they are cloth bound. I mean, these are like bound books that they have in here. So they just look and feel really nice. The sizing, vertical size, it's a little non-standard. It's a little taller, but they'll still fit on a shelf. So
yeah, they're extremely
it's nice
premium.
to feel like you, yeah. So you feel like it feels well thought out and it looks great for something that, you know, is a collector's. Like, it doesn't look like, as some people like to say, just plastic on a shelf, which I totally understand that. I get the criticism, but a lot of it doesn't look like that anymore. They're putting a lot of thought into the way these things look. So
very true.
Yeah.
If I could shout out a packaging choice that I love, one of my favorite packaged films that I have is the 2008 Steve Carell starring Get Smart film. I have the DVD of this that is housed in the sole of an oversized shoe phone. And it is one of my favorite possessions that I own, because I'm just a huge Get Smart fan. I mean, the movie is what it is. Obviously not the best adaptation of that series, but it is a lot of fun for what it is, and Anne Hathaway is great in it. But the packaging design for this specifically, it makes me so happy.
Yeah, the sort of novelty packaging is another whole rabbit hole you could go down. There's a lot of fun and weird things floating around out there. It's sort of like we're in like the popcorn bucket era of theater going, and there's a lot of comps you could draw there.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for that question. And just to reiterate, anyone else that has questions that would like to write in can do so at blindbuyspod@gmail.com, and we will read your message live here on the air. Now that we have finished our business on Speed Racer and Letters from Friends, Jesse, we have a very special announcement for our next episode, and I'll let you take that one on and tell us what it is.
Yes, so our angle here is physical media. We love physical media in all of its forms, and we also love highlighting places where you can get it that are not the sort of big purveyors that you know that offer lots of deals. As nice as deals are, there are still brick and mortar spots where you can buy where there's a sense of place, a sense of curation, and maybe even kind of a sense of community. And one of those that's popped up here in Seattle within the last year or so is the Tomb of Treasure down in the White Center neighborhood. It's a primarily horror themed shop. I mentioned it here, and I think we did a shout out on our Instagram for it. But anyway, the Tomb of Treasure is a really awesome spot slinging physical media. And so we are going to have the proprietor of the Tomb of Treasure, Violet, is going to be joining us next time. And Violet's pick is from 1990, a film called Hardware by director Richard Stanley, which you might know if you saw the Nick Cage film The Color Out of Space, sort of Lovecraftian horror movie from a few years ago. This was another film that Richard Stanley directed back in 1990. And to give a quick synopsis, just off Letterboxd, Mark 13 is a government-built killing machine programmed with artificial intelligence able to repair and recharge itself from any energy source. Through a series of coincidences, the cyborg's head ends up in the home of a sculptress as a bizarre Christmas present from her boyfriend. Once inside its new home, the cyborg promptly reconstructs the rest of its body using a variety of household utensils and proceeds to go on a murderous rampage. So it sounds fantastic. I haven't seen a trailer. I'm unfamiliar with this movie.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. And we're excited to have Violet join us and to kind of pick her brain about what it's like to run one of these shops, because we're grateful that they're still out there. Hopefully you're lucky enough to have a place like it near you. But yeah, so that will be next week. 1990s hardware might be hard to track down. There's a Umbrella 4K that's out. There's some other out of print ones, but if you get creative, you might be able to find a place to watch it.
Yeah. Yep. I will hopefully be trying to obtain at least a DVD copy of this before we record. So I'm very eager to check this out. All right. You heard it here first, folks. Next episode, we'll have Violet from the Tomb of Treasure discussing 1990s hardware. We will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.